Welcome to the deep dive. We got some really interesting sources from you this week, all focused on, well, getting a better handle on life and priorities.
Yeah, and instead of you having to wade through everything, we thought we'd pull out the main ideas right here.
Exactly, because what really jumps out, especially from the work by Stephen Covey and the Merrills in First Things First, is this idea that just managing time harder,
Yeah,
it often backfires.
it really does. It can actually lead to more frustration, more guilt. You feel like you're doing more, but achieving less of what matters.
Totally. You get the fancy planner, learn the hacks, try to squeeze more in, but that overwhelmed feeling, it often gets worse.
So that's our mission today. We want to dig into the principles behind putting first things first. It's not just about schedules.
No, it's about like life leadership,
Yeah.
finding ways to live that feel more meaningful and hopefully a bit less stressful.
Okay, so let's start with that core metaphor they use, the clock and the compass.
Mhm.
Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. So picture the clock. That's your schedule, your appointments, your deadlines, all the things buying for your time. It's how we manage stuff moment to moment.
Right, the commitments, the tasks.
But then there's the compass, and that's different. That's your inner direction finder, your values, your principles, what you feel is really important in the bigger picture.
And the core problem they highlight is when there's a gap between those two, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the struggle. Your clock is packed, you're running around, but your activities, they don't actually line up with where your compass says you should be going.
You feel busy, but kind of empty, maybe? Unfulfilled.
Yeah, precisely. You're efficient, maybe, but not effective in terms of your own deep values. And that's why they argue we need to move beyond just time management.
To life leadership, rooted in principles.
Right. Which brings us to this other really key idea, urgency addiction.
Ah, yes. This is fascinating. It's how we get hooked on dealing with the immediate, the pressing stuff.
Oh, I definitely recognize that.
Right.
It's almost like a buzz you get from putting out fires, jumping from crisis to crisis.
Mhm. But the sources are clear. Urgency itself isn't bad. Some things are urgent. The problem is when urgency becomes the main driver of your choices.
Yeah, you lose sight of what's actually important in the long run because you're constantly reacting to what feels urgent now.
And that constant reaction mode just makes that gap between the clock and the compass even wider, doesn't it? You're letting the urgent dictate, not your internal compass.
So how do we get a better handle on this? They introduced that time management matrix. That's super helpful.
Really is. Okay, so imagine a grid, two axes, urgent, not urgent, and important, not important. That gives you 4 quadrants.
Okay.
Quadrant I is urgent and important. These are your real crises, your genuine deadlines, pressing problems. You have to deal with these.
Right, like a medical emergency or a project that's literally due today. You can't just ignore quadrant I.
No, but the trap is living there constantly. That's the fast track to burnout, stress, always feeling behind.
Okay, so what's next?
Quadrant 2. This is the sweet spot. Important, but not urgent.
Ah, the quadrant of quality, they call it.
Exactly. This is where the high leverage activities live. Things like planning, prevention, relationship building, learning, exercise, recreation even.
Stuff that builds your capacity and prevents future crises, but doesn't scream for attention right now.
Precisely. And here's the key. Quadrant 2 requires proactivity. It doesn't push on you. You have to consciously choose to spend time there.
And the payoff is huge, right? Investing here actually shrinks quadrant I over time. Fewer crises pop up.
That's the fundamental idea. You become less reactive, more in control. Okay, then quadrant 3.
Quadrant 3 is urgent, but not important. The quadrant of deception.
Deception, yeah. Because the urgency makes things feel important.
Mhm.
Phone calls, interruptions, emails, some meetings. Often they're urgent to someone else, but not actually aligned with your core goals.
Got it. So you feel busy, maybe even productive, but you're just reacting to noise or other people's priorities.
Spot on. It's easy to get stuck here thinking you're in quadrant 1.
Okay, and the last one,
Quadrant 4th. Not urgent and not important.
the quadrant of waste.
Basically, yeah. Trivia, time wasters, mindlessly scrolling, stuff we often do to escape the pressure from quadrants and 3, actually.
Makes sense. So the goal, the importance paradigm, is to focus effort on quadrants 1st and 2 and actively minimize 3rd and 4th.
Exactly. Live primarily from a center of importance, dealing with urgency when necessary, but proactively building through quadrant 2.
Now, why do we get drawn into 3rd and 4th so easily? The sources talk about these 4 fundamental human needs.
Right, this adds another layer. They suggest we have 4 basic needs: to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy.
Okay, so to live, that's our physical stuff. Health, safety, basic well-being.
Mm-hmm. Physical and economic survival.
Yeah.
Then to love, that's our social need. Relationships, connection, belonging.
To learn, our mental need for growth, development, education.
Yep. And finally, to leave a legacy. This is the spiritual dimension, the need for meaning, purpose, contribution, making a difference.
And the crucial link here is that if these needs aren't being met,
We feel a void, an emptiness. And sometimes that urgency addiction, that constant busyness in quadrants 3 and 4, is actually an attempt to fill that void, even though it doesn't truly satisfy the underlying need.
wow. Okay, so we're chasing urgency instead of addressing the real hunger.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But when these needs are met, and in an integrated way, they talk about achieving critical mass.
What does that mean?
It's like synergy. When you're addressing all 4 needs in a balanced way, it ignites this inner passion, a clear vision, a powerful sense of purpose.
And that leave a legacy need is particularly powerful.
Very much so. They suggest it can transform the other needs. Your physical well-being, your relationships, your knowledge, they become capacities you can use for that larger purpose, for contribution.
It reframes everything, and this ties into their idea of true north, right? Those universal principles.
Exactly. Like an internal compass pointing towards effectiveness and fulfillment based on timeless principles that govern human interaction and growth.
So, knowing all this, the matrix, the needs, the principles, how do we actually do it? How do we organize ourselves around quadrant 2?
Okay, this is where Quadrant 2 organizing comes in. And the key difference from typical planning is the focus on the week, not just the day.
By the week.
Because the week gives you a broader context. Daily planning can be too narrow, too focused on the immediate clock. Weekly organizing lets you connect with your compass first.
So what's step 1?
Step 1 is huge. Connect with what's most important. Your vision, your mission, your deepest values. Really ground yourself in that why before you plan the what.
Okay, connect with the compass first, then.
Then you identify your key roles. You're not just one thing, right? You might be a parent, a spouse, a manager, a team member, a friend, part of a community.
And crucially, they include that role of taking care of yourself, sharpen the saw.
Absolutely fundamental. Physical, social, emotional, mental, spiritual renewal. It's a role like any other and needs attention.
So identify roles. Next.
Select goals. For the upcoming week, choose just 1 or 2 important Quadrant 2 goals for each key role. Not a huge to-do list, but specific, impactful things.
Things that will make a real difference in that role if you do them.
Precisely. And here's the game changer. Schedule those goals.
Not just list them, but actually block out time in your week for them, like appointments.
Yes, make appointments with yourself for your priorities. Don't just hope you'll find time, make the time. Schedule the big rocks first.
That feels powerful, putting the important stuff on the calendar before it gets crowded out.
It is. Then, they suggest a quick daily preview, looking at your weekly plan, identifying the key QII activities for that day, maybe adjusting.
And finally, a weekly review.
Crucial. Look back at the week. What worked, what didn't, what decisions did you make, how aligned were you with your first things? It's about learning and adjusting.
So it's a cycle.
Yeah.
Connect, roles, goals, schedule, daily action, weekly review. It shifts your whole focus to importance.
It really empowers you to be proactive, not reactive.
And driving all this, you mentioned vision and mission earlier. How central are they?
Absolutely central. They talk about the passion of vision, the deep energy you get from knowing your purpose, your potential contribution, your legacy. It's principle-based.
It's the fuel, isn't it?
It really is. And a personal mission statement becomes a vital tool to connect with that energy regularly. It's not just something you write once and forget.
You need to engage with it.
Weekly, they suggest. Read it, reflect on it, let it inform your weekly QII organizing, maybe even a yearly retreat to really dive deep and refine it.
So that mission statement becomes your constitution, your filter for making choices.
Exactly. It helps you say no to the unimportant with more confidence because you have a burning yes inside.
Okay, let's talk more about those roles. They should flow from the mission.
Ideally, yes. Your natural roles, family, work, community, should feel like expressions of your core purpose, synergistic ways to, live, love, learn, and leave that legacy.
Rather than competing demands pulling you apart.
Right. And viewing each role as a stewardship adds another dimension. What do they mean by that?
Stewardship implies responsibility, accountability. You're entrusted with that role, and you have an impact on people, on outcomes, maybe even future generations. It encourages you to think about the kind of impact you want to have.
That adds weight. And within each role, you need balance.
Yeah, considering those four dimensions, again, physical, spiritual, social, mental, within each role, helps ensure you're nurturing the whole person in every area of your life, not just, say, focusing only on the task aspects of your job.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, how does goal setting fit into this more principle-centered approach?
Well, they talk about the personal integrity account. It's basically your self-trust.
Like,
Every time you set a meaningful goal and follow through, you make a deposit, you trust yourself more. Every time you break a promise to yourself, it's a withdrawal.
I like that analogy. And traditional goal setting often uses imagination and willpower.
Right, which are important. But these sources add two more crucial elements, conscience and self-awareness.
Conscience connects your goals back to your mission and principles, right? Keeps them aligned with true north.
Exactly. Ensures they're meaningful, not just ambitious. And self-awareness.
That helps you be realistic, understand your starting point, see where you need to grow. It prevents setting yourself up for failure, but also encourages stretching yourself appropriately.
It connects you to your conscience, too, helping you see the gap between where you are and where your principles say you could be, and then making course corrections with integrity.
So conscience guides the what, and self-awareness informs the how and the realistic. It leads to more sustainable progress and builds that self-trust account.
Okay, back to the week for a second. Why is that perspective so valuable for organizing?
Well, like we said, it provides context beyond the day. It allows for balanced renewal planning, rest, and reflection. It helps you see the whole picture, how your roles and goals fit together synergistically. It puts daily stuff in perspective.
It stops you from getting lost in the weeds of the day-to-day.
Exactly. It helps you make better choices in the moment, choosing the best over just the good, because you have that weekly context in mind.
Which leads to integrity in the moment of choice. Why is that moment so critical?
Because that pause or lack of pause between stimulus and response, that's where your character is forged. That's where you exercise your freedom to choose based on principles, not just react based on conditioning or urgency.
And the QII organizing process helps create more space in that moment.
Yes, by being more prepared, more conscious of your priorities, you're better equipped to pause, consult your conscience, and act with integrity, aligning with your principles, needs, and goals. It's about conscious, courageous action.
And the weekly evaluation isn't just about ticking boxes, it's about learning from living.
Absolutely. It closes the loop. Organize, act, evaluate, learn, adapt. It becomes an upward spiral of growth, constantly refining based on real experience.
Okay, so far we've focused a lot on the individual, but the sources made a big shift then, don't they, towards interdependence?
Huge shift. They emphasize that our first things, the truly important stuff, almost always involve other people. Relationships are key.
So quality of life isn't just an independent achievement.
Not primarily. It's fundamentally interdependent. We live in connection with others. Recognizing this changes everything.
How so?
It shifts your definition of importance. Those quadrant 2 activities focused on building relationships, understanding others, creating shared vision, they move way up the priority list.
Because you realize your effectiveness, your fulfillment, even your legacy depends heavily on those connections.
Exactly. It moves you beyond just personal productivity to thinking about effective collaboration and contribution across all levels: personal, interpersonal, teams, organizations, society.
And how do we navigate that effectively? They bring in the win-win ideas.
Yes, the framework from the 7 habits. Think win-win. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize. It's a principle-based roadmap for interdependent success.
So always looking for mutual benefit, really listening before you talk, and aiming for creative cooperation where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Spot on. It's about building high-trust relationships where everyone can contribute their best.
Which connects to their ideas on empowerment, right? It's not something you do to people.
No, exactly. Empowerment isn't installed, it's grown. It comes from the inside out. You create the conditions for people to empower themselves by respecting their 4 needs, encouraging them to use their 4 endowments: self-awareness, conscience, imagination, independent will.
So leaders need to shift their focus.
Definitely. Away from control and micromanagement towards quadrant 2 leadership, creating shared vision, coaching, mentoring, building trust, removing obstacles, servant leadership, essentially.
And things like 360-degree feedback can be really valuable here.
Hugely valuable if it's done in the context of a shared vision and mission. It provides crucial self-awareness for growth, both personally and professionally.
Okay, so making the shift from just time management to true personal and even interpersonal leadership. It sounds profound, but probably not easy.
Oh, it's challenging. Habits are deep-rooted. Paradigms are hard to shift. It takes conscious, consistent effort.
But the payoff is that even everyday tasks can feel different.
That's the beauty of it. When you operate from a quadrant 2 mindset, your daily activities become opportunities. Opportunities to build skills, strengthen relationships, live your values, grow your character.
It reframes the mundane into something meaningful.
You start to experience that upward spiral more consistently. Progress in one area fuels progress in others.
And ultimately, the sources conclude this leads to peace.
Yes, peace is essentially a function of putting first things first. It's the deep inner peace that comes from aligning your life, your clock, with your principles, your needs, your capacities, your compass.
Peace in all dimensions.
That's the idea. Peace of conscience, because you're living with integrity. Peace of mind, because you're focused and purposeful. Peace in relationships, built on trust and understanding. Even physical peace, from reduced stress and balanced living. Your expectations align with reality and principles.
Wow. And they end with that really reflective thought, don't they?
Yeah, it's quite powerful. Basically, an invitation to connect with your own conscience and ask, is there something, maybe even something small, that you feel prompted to do to make a positive difference?
Echoing Gandhi, become the change we seek in the world.
Exactly. Taking even small, principle-centered actions generates that inner peace. It starts with you.
So to wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway really is that monumental shift, isn't it? From chasing the urgent to intentionally choosing the important. From the clock dictating to the compass guiding.
Absolutely. Prioritizing quadrant 2. Living by principles, that's the path to a life that's not just effective, but deeply meaningful and ultimately more peaceful. Aligning the clock with the compass.
So we really encourage you, take a moment after this. Think about your first things. Does that time management matrix resonate? Where are you spending your time? How could you carve out more space for quadrant 2?
Maybe start small. Think about your roles, your core values.
And here's that final question for you to chew on. What is just one important, not urgent activity, one quadrant 2 task that you could schedule, actually put in your calendar this week, that you genuinely feel would make a significant positive difference to your life or work?
Thanks so much for joining us on this exploration. We hope it sparked some useful ideas and maybe some motivation to try things a bit differently.
Yeah, thank you for sending in the sources that got us talking about this. Let us know your thoughts or any questions that come up as you mull this over.